Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens. This is Jake along with Scott, and we are really deep into the podcast before we even hit the record button. About 35 minutes talking football, and you all would have probably enjoyed that. We talked about movies, but we're going to be talking whiskey now. We're moving into the coup de grace that you all get to hear on the podcast. So we're with CEO and founder of Blind Barrels, Bobby DeMars. If you don't know, now you know. He played football at the University of Southern California, Troy, fight on, all that crap. It's real football's played in the SEC. We still know that. Go Cats, all of that. But we're excited to talk about that. I'm going to catch flack from all people that like football now from that introduction. But Bobby, thanks for joining the Bourbon Lens tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me on, guys. Great intro. Yeah. I mean, look, come on. When you say, I noticed how you had to say University of Southern California, because when you say USC, you're like, some people are going to think it's the Cox. And it's like, or the Gamecocks, right? Whereas if you're over here, nobody specifies. You just say USC, and it's very arrogant of us to do that. But you don't do that when you're East.
Yeah, but it's like people from Ohio State saying the Ohio State. I'm like, most land grant universities have the in front of them or the. So don't be pretentious. Like, spell it out for the people.
Yeah, we used to say L, Southern California. No, because out here the Dodgers are really like the Doyers, right?
Yeah,
like it's. Like our audience, honestly, is massive Hispanic audience at the USC crowd, and I didn't know that until I was in the stands, and I got to tell you, these guys are way more awesome than the rich white fans because they stay the whole game, they cheer. They stand up, and not that all the white fans are bad. I'm not racially profiling our white fans. Okay, I'll take some heat for that, right? But there was nothing worse than like if we weren't like winning or dominating a team, like everybody just leaves. Like our fourth quarters were so sad in the non-Pete Carroll era. We would just look up, and I was so like when we would travel to certain schools, like I remember we got demolished by Florida State. And nobody left. And I will say the one thing about Florida State, when you're playing in that town, what was it? Bobby Bowden was the coach.
Yep.
Like everybody in that town in Tallahassee was committed. Like we went to the movie theater because Friday nights you go see a movie or something, and we go to the mall, and everybody just silently tomahawk chopped us as if like they knew this unspoken rule. And the only two things I remember about that game is every single ad in front of like in the program, because that's what you do. You go in the locker room and everybody takes turns taking a dump and reading the program. That's like the first hour and a half of being in the locker room. There you go, guys. I peeled back the curtain of big time college football, and every ad in there was like Bobby Bowden in front of the rib store. Like this guy must have got made like $80,000 a game just from being in the ads of like the program. And Carson Palmer got injured the day before the game, or in the week before. He like broke his wrist or something. And so our quarterback was this guy named Mike Van Rephorst. Sorry, Mike. And we're in this locker room, and the visitor locker room in Florida State's terrible. You're like in this big open room, and there's no lockers. Your pads are on folding chairs. It was garbage, and it's just really quiet. And all of a sudden, you hear echoing from the bathroom, our soon-to-be quarterback of the game is just dry heaving his guts out. You just hear, ugh. And granted, I'd be nervous too, but man, this guy, I don't know if you remember the D-line of Florida State in the late 90s, but they were massive and scary, and he had every reason to dry heave because they hit him so many times that game.
Well, and those were like when Florida State and Miami were having hella football games, and it was wide right like all the time.
Oh yeah. The kick at the end of the game. The kicker always found a way to miss the kick.
Yeah.
Right.
The Chris Winkie days.
Well, kickers are, what do you feel about kickers, Jake? What's your,
they're really nice individuals. And for the most part, but like if their like toenails aren't clipped correctly, that thing's not going through the uprights.
Their Templemen are little. Like, I just hate it because we used to have 3-a-days where you'd have 3 practices in one day for 24 days straight. Forget about nobody does 2-a-days anymore. Like, I literally woke up in sweats every August for 8 years because of that. And my roommates were kickers, and they'll be like, "Oh, camp started." And I'm like, "You gotta go like get a suntan, and you're gonna kick things. You're not gonna get yelled at by Ed Ogeron or."
Yeah,
it's like crazy people along the way that are just making your life hell. And then, they sit there and they miss the kick and nobody wants to sit next to them on the plane ride home.
Yep.
There's just like a bunch of big dudes. So I'm like, I'm going to go sit with the big dudes instead of the little kicker because it's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's rough being there. And that's, football teaches a lot about life. And, you just got to continue to fight on, as the Trojans say. And one day you get lucky enough and Lincoln Riley leaves Boomer Sooner and heads out west, and he brings his 5-star quarterback, and Southern California is now relevant in football again.
Well, we're excited again. What are we excited about? We haven't won anything yet. I don't know. We're going to find out. I mean, Fight On is really interesting because that's actually, I made a documentary about college athletes called The Business of Amateurs. And I'm on the oversight committee for college athletes' rights. And we passed a bill in California and eventually 12 other states and got in front of the Supreme Court. So athletes can make money from their name, image, and likeness now. So the final part of the film, actually, spoiler alert, the last part of the film is actually Fight On. And it's a message that says, I'm doing what my school taught me to do rather than, and luckily Trojans embraced it. But sports is a religion. You know what I mean? Like you mess with somebody's religion and they get heated. And, I did some things in the press that people were a little worried about. I was going to throw USC under the bus, which I didn't. It was an honest portrayal.
Yeah.
But Ed Ogeron, the former LSU head coach, was my position coach for 4 years. And he's just a horrible human being. He's behind the scenes. I can't tell you where all the bodies are buried because they'll find me and murder me. But the guy was just a bad dude. And I did an article where he used to cuss me out when I had to leave practice early in the spring to go to class. And the homers kind of got on me.
Yeah.
And I will tell you one great Ogeron story that we're getting ready to start football camp. And he's already a scary dude. He's been there like 4 months and it's a room full of D linemen. And he starts reading the schedule to us. He's like, all right, we got wake up at 7:30, be on time, get yourself some breakfast. And he says, then at 8:00, we got the group team photo. Now, when he says photo instead of photo, this giant defensive lineman, Aaron Williams, looks back at me and he mouthed, what? Like, what? Now, from that moment forward, I'm trying not to laugh at Ogeron's speech impediment as he continues. Then we got the individual position photo, and then we got the individual traveler photo. That's the mascot. And then we got the individual video headshot photo. Whatever the fuck that is. Can we be the reach block or what? He told a joke at the end, and we were all everybody's like shaking because they can't laugh. And he told a shitty joke and we laughed at it, and the room just exploded. And it was just like, but yeah, that guy was a character.
Is this the guy from The Waterboy?
We watched The Waterboy at a team movie, like with him in the room, and all we did, it was just us laughing because he's like farmer friends, like, oh, skilly old, and he was a send up of it was just, Ogeron was born in a swamp with a frog in his pocket. Like the dude literally is as Louisiana country as you can get.
Oh yeah, it's go Tigers.
Oh yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about the base behind Blind Barrels. Like, what was the concept that you were trying to curate for whiskey drinkers and lovers across the spectrum of the United States here with this Blind Barrels concept?
I mean, there were several things we were trying to do when we were creating these lineups. Obviously, we love the idea of a blind tasting. Let your senses tell you what you like rather than, look, we've all bought that $100 bottle that you've heard of the brand, or you just spend a lot of money on it and you end up not liking it. And what a waste in and of itself. And we call that label failure, when you convince yourself that something's awesome and it's not. And so removing all that bias that we have, the label bias, the cost bias, granted, everything in our lineup is usually above a certain amount. It's usually $50 to $150 bottles, some a little bit more. So we want everyone to feel like they're getting something out of it. But we wanted to make sure that our lineup had things that people couldn't get. There's 3,000 independent craft whiskey distillers in the United States alone. You go to Total Wine, you go to BevMo, you go to your biggest liquor store in town, there's 200 spots on the shelf space. And what happens is when Prohibition ended, in the early 1930s, the 3-tier system came involved. I mean, I hear you guys on your show talk about all the time. It's actually why I really like your show. You guys know your liquor laws, and it has to go from a producer, a distiller, to a distributor, to a retailer. And the distributors, there's a few big dogs, and they have a stranglehold. And if you don't know the guys that are the boots on the ground, if you're not, paying them off or doing whatever you got to do to get that shelf space, these small distillers crush it in their area. For 50 miles, they're rock stars, but then they die down outside of that. And so when we did this, we wanted to make sure that we were showcasing and supporting the best in American craft distillers. And also, it's not just this curated lineup you can't get. It's not just a blind tasting. If you want to buy a full bottle, you can buy it for the same price as if you were at the distillery. So there's bottles. I'm in California. Don't judge. There's bottles out here that I know in the secondary market go for over 100, but I know that they retail at the distillery for $49.99. So we literally sell it for the exact same price. We don't make money from bottle sales, but people that are in blind barrels, they stay in it, I think, for access. Yes, the blind tasting's fun. Yeah, you get to try to guess what's the mash bill, like what's the proof, maybe even guess the distillery. And some of these are very obscure. It's almost impossible to, and some of them are less obscure. But I think that element, that access, is really one of the best parts. And at the end of the day, that's everybody wins in that scenario. Our subscribers do, the distillers do. And if you want to go to the distillery, if you want to find a cheaper way to get it, all the more power to you. We want to empower these people, our subscribers, to discover these brands and then support them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that, and I'm going to give Scott a ton of credit for this for us. And one of the things that we embraced really early on as a podcast was one that we knew we were from the bourbon capital of the world, but it was really hard to get in contact with some of the major legacy brands because of, notoriety, not having a following, yada, yada, yada. And I think Scott was instrumental in us reaching out to, smaller craft brands and going down that path. And so Scott, I'd love, you were the one that did a lot of this research. So I'd love for you to take, that away and why we did and how we got to where we are, just loving craft whiskey.
Yeah. I mean, it's just looking at what podcasts are out there. We're not the first bourbon podcast. We're not going to be the last. There's been many, many, many since we've even come around, and we just wanted to find something that was different. Everybody was talking about the same things. They were talking about the allocated bottles, all the Buffalo Trace stuff, all the, the expensive stuff. To me, that doesn't interest me. I don't like to spend money on stuff that I know is just because people are chasing it. If I'm going to spend money, it's because I know somebody worked hard to put out their product. And very early on, I just started reaching out to the smaller brands. Be like, if I taste it and it's not good, that's fine. Maybe it's not ready. But a lot of those podcasts we didn't record. Brands we've talked to and have improved over the past 3 years that we've been doing this, and just to get exposure or to expose some of those brands and the stories, I think that's huge. And I definitely appreciate what you've done here, because you're seeking out those smaller brands, the craft distillers. Even if craft has kind of lost some of its meaning over the past few years because everybody's trying to latch onto it, even the big guys. But it's just, these might be things that, like you said, you might be able to find access to it, or it might expose you to a brand. And even if you can't find the exact whiskey here in 6 months, whenever you want to, maybe you can find their next offering or another barrel or a bottling or a batch or something like that. So that otherwise you wouldn't have seen if you went in Total Wine, because Total Wine, you get tunnel vision, right? Mm-hmm. Where is the expensive, the allocated bottle? Do they have anything special out today?
Yeah.
And
everyone's got their Total Wine guy. Hey, Jordan, you got any? It's noon on the Friday. Got any allocations? And look, yeah. the taters are going to tate at the end of the day. Look, I got Old Carter, I got Stag, I got awesome bottles at my house too, because I love them, and I do a little bit of bourbon hunting myself. But imagine we found the next, Widow Jane or the next Heaven Hill, before they are what they are. Some of the bottles that are in the lineup you're about to try have actually already gone up because the demand for them, they've gotten popular. I've got some whiskey wizards on our team, or our spirits guys, as we call them. And we blind, I know we got a million. We blind taste everything. Nobody's buying their way into our lineup. We literally blind taste everything before they end up in our lineup. And that's the only way that it works. And it's not just whiskey nerds that can be like, oh, what is that, candied marzipan? And that can like pull out weird notes. My CFO doesn't even drink whiskey, and he's involved, and we have novices and we have newbies and we have everybody of every range that kind of weighs in. And our guys really listen to who likes what. Somebody in our June lineup, our CFO loved it so much that he went on a 2-hour search to find bottles, and he failed at it. He tried to find bottles of this. He kept calling because he fell in love with it, that much in love with it. And it did sway us, and we did like it. And it was really popular in our June lineup. And, getting to kind of break these brands. And it's the thing about great whiskeys, it's meant to be shared, right? I don't have an unopened bottle at my house. I don't care what it is. I don't have a museum at my house. Some of the things in the lineup that we're about to do, I always have a bottle at my house, because when somebody's over and I get to pour it for them and they go, what is this? One of these is something that like bourbon drinkers will go, well, I only drink bourbon. I'm not a rye guy. Well, you should try this, because this is going to completely change your mind at the way that you look at ryes. And it'll be interesting to see as we go through the lineup. I mean, if you guys want to go through the lineup, to kind of see if you can pick out, and forget about trying to be right. Most people aren't right. Every now and again, somebody will be like, that's such and such. And I'm like, that just blew my mind right now. Like, I can't do that at all. I know more about liquor laws than I do about pulling notes out. But I did go from being a drinker to a taster. Don't drink alone, taste with friends, right? There's my PSA of being a responsible whiskey company. That there's a mindful component, I think, of being present, being connected. We try to do this with our kids when we're around our kids. When you have that busy day, you ever have that moment when you're with your kids? I don't know you guys, some of you have kids or not, where you, or your wife or your girlfriend or your friends, where you've got all these worries and yet you're trying to be connected to the moment with that person, because it is important, because that's what we have, right? Whiskey totally does that for me. It reminds me of that, I'm focusing on on the color. I'm using my eyes, and now I'm using my nose, and now I'm using my mouth, and now I'm using my sense of touch, the mouth feel. Like, all these components are driving us into the present moment. And then you're sharing it with your friends, and you're having a communal moment. And the coolest thing that I discovered in this whole path was the whiskey community alone. Shows like yours and these small distillers, and getting to learn their stories, and the people that already support that, the people that are discovering them. Like, that's what I love about what Blind Barrels does, is it opens that up, and it creates this conversation, whether we're right or wrong and what we like or don't like.
Yeah. I mean, I think the greatest thing about whiskey, and the hardest part for people to understand, is drink what you like, and try new things. If you're a high proof bourbon drinker, that's great. Like, kudos to you. And there's plenty of high proof bourbon at craft, at scale, whatever, but try an American single malt, try a rye whiskey. We just did a podcast with Old Potrero in San Francisco, right? Hodling & Co. and 100% malted rye, completely different, but I would put up their 100% malted rye with almost any rye whiskey I've ever drank. Like, Scott, I fangirled on Monday when we talked to Bruce. Like, I was loving that shit. Like, and it was amazing. And, the repackaging is great, but like, that's another brand. Like, I don't know if you all have connected with Hodling & Co. and Old Potrero, but like, that's a really unique brand that's craft, and a lot of people would bite on it.
Make an introduction, because we're actually, our September lineup, we're actually going to all the distilleries, and we're doing, my backdrop as a filmmaker, we're going to be making mini documentaries of all of them, and we are going to be passing through there.
Yeah.
So that'd be awesome if you could, warm introductions are always better than cold calls, right? And especially when you already have that relationship, and we'll be biased going in there. Sometimes you go to these distilleries and you get romanticized, right? And that you're in this barn, or you're talking to this guy with the handmade vest or whatever it is, and or you're right in front of the still, and then later on we still blind taste it to make sure that it holds up as well. But I love meeting the people that are the whiskey renegades, as you want to call them, that are out there in craft. And the reality is half of craft, they're either fresh at it, and that's why a lot of young brands are sourcing, and they haven't figured it out yet. But there's some that are just hitting home runs like pretty early on, and are doing things. Yes, maybe they're doing some smaller barrels. We haven't had any. We don't allow like flavoring in our lineup, and rapid maturation is some of those things that I think are going to thwart everybody from wanting to actually think that, like, trust our sensibility, so to speak. But I mean, if it's naturally flavored, I mean, we're talking about the grain, the ground, the wood, the thyme, all the different things that really go into the natural sense of whiskey. If it's hitting all those things and it's good, then we want it in our lineup.
Well, I mean, you
should definitely listen to the old Potrero episode when it comes out. But
yeah,
I mean, it'll be out by the time this one comes out. But they were one of the first craft rye distilleries. I mean, they've been doing this since
93 is when they started.
Yeah, mid to late 90s.
Well, El Potrero, you know what it's Spanish for? The Potrero. All right. No, but there's a Potrero road down the street from me, and I'm kind of curious of living potter. I don't know what it means, but it's probably the last name of the guy that founded it, right?
No, the guy who started it.
No. It actually broke off from Anchor Brewing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which the craft movement and the whole artisanal craft movement that kind of broke off when Jimmy Carter opened up the rules because his brother made beer, really kind of was the catalyst for a lot of this stuff. And you take the wine industry, you take the foodie culture of the 90s, all these things kind of formed a perfect storm to put us in the second whiskey boom that we are right now, which unfortunately makes Elmer T. Levy $4.50 a bottle. Damn it. I used to drink that like it was nothing all the time. And now I'm like, why did I drink all that? I can't get it now.
But like you talked about breaking whiskeys and like breaking them in to like mainstream. I think one of the most interesting things and like pleasures that I've gotten from this experience is like helping like like people like Starlight. Like we were their first podcast, like right before the pandemic, and we sat down with Ted and Christian and we drank and we drank and we drank and we had designated drivers there because like it was just a long day, but it was putting in content or like meeting Caleb really early on, like Scott and Michael before we had multiple mics and like all these things. Like
the Huber family, right?
Yeah, the Huber family. Hubers? Yeah, and
that's
then
dope, man.
And Peerless with Caleb and Corky and some of these.
Corky.
Yeah. There's just a lot of really cool families out there and a lot of really great stories of craft whiskey. And we've covered a lot of them. If you are a craft whiskey fan and you're also a Blind Barrels fan and you want to maybe throw out some ideas to them, I mean, we've not hit 3,000, but of our almost nearly 200 episodes, I would say about half of them are craft whiskey.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I mean, we are listening to our subscribers actually recommended we do reach out. I mean, if you email support@blindbarrels.com, you'll get me.
Yeah,
we're a small company. We're a small business, a small American business supporting American small businesses. And I've been to the Starlight Distillery, and I was blown away. The problem is I couldn't leave. I had a flight. We almost got late because they have amazing finishes.
Yep.
They just like, this hasn't come out yet. I'm like, Jesus Christ. And I'm like, let me try it. And it was try this, that good. And I mean, Peerless, I mean, come on, dude. Like that bottle looks like a Dusty. Their branding, their bottle shape. I got to tell you, I mean, from a rye standpoint, you're not going to get a better rye. And I was lucky enough to be on a call with Corky, and we're hoping one day we can get them in our lineup. But because they have everything, they have history, and it's undeniably badass whiskey. Both of those, Starlight and the Huber family, their tour is great. Go visit them, check them out. Super friendly, everybody that works there. And unfortunately, everybody we talk to, sometimes there's a timeline. I think one of the hardest thing with creating lineups is it takes sometimes our September lineup. There's 3 distillers in the lineup that we've been talking to for 15 months. Yeah. Before they ended up in our lineup because we wanted to sync up with their timeline, and we were patient for when we could actually do that. Mm-hmm. And special special stuff. I'll send you guys our June box too, so you can kind of see. We're doing our March box. Or the one that I sent you was our March box, and that's mainly because our lineups never happen again. It's not like you order today, you get it tomorrow. Everybody gets the box at the same time. So mid-March, mid-June, mid-September, mid-December. So if you got a friend, a family, a coworker in another state, you guys are going to get the same unique one-off lineup that'll never happen again at the exact same time. So what a better way to check in with friends every 3 months and commit to that checking in.
Yeah.
Right.
So speaking of the box, like that's one of the things I wanted to talk about is the box itself. Like the packaging is really well done. Like we've had blind tasting experience, whether from distilleries or whatnot. Like this is a really well done packaging with the magnetic box and the inserts and everything. Like I think that's one of the things you should be applauded from is the aesthetics of it. Like that would be enough alone to come back, right? Because you get a really nice tasting guide, you get a QR code to reveal the samples. So if you want to do that before or after, but the flavoring wheel and all those things are really well done. And I think that's one of the things that I first noticed about this, like seeing it, whether we got our influencer package or the package we got today, when I first saw it in person, I really liked just the packaging of it all.
It sounds ridiculous, but I mean, I spent months and months and months trying to find something that made that price point. It's soft touch with the gold foil, the magnet enclosure, and the custom foam color litho on the inside. What we really wanted to make sure was that people associate not just our brand, but all of these brands themselves with a top shelf experience. Could we have saved money and done corrugated boxes and found a way to do that? Yeah, and I think a lot of people do cut those corners for obvious reasons to make margins better. But at the end of the day, you can pull that foam out and you can put your weed in there. You can reuse that box for a lot of cool. We actually have some people that are growing plants out of their box. They're doing some cool stuff with it because it's such a nice box. You almost don't want to throw it away, right? Even the bottles, what you notice, there's a weightiness to the bottles. Everything that we did, the caps, there's a metal finish on the cap. We wanted to make sure that everything was top shelf. For our brand, but for everybody else too. But thanks for the compliment. I really appreciate that.
Don't you worry. I'll use the sample bottles again.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, well, damn, even after the first time you do this, you can make your own sample bottles for your friend.
Yeah,
you've
absolutely.
You've got some random samples that you want. I know Jake and I do this all the time. Meet in the parking lot and swap samples.
Whiskey, samples of whiskey.
Samples of whiskey.
Right. But yeah, I mean, hell, the presentation is definitely killer. When this shows up in the mail, it's like you're excited for it because it's a reveal. The whole thing is a reveal. It's open up the bigger cardboard box, you get your nice brown. This is brown, right?
It's interesting. The prototype was black, and then when they say like, well, when they mass produce it, it becomes an off whatever, and I'm like, it's fine.
Well, it's kind of like like the color of the Maker's Mark rick houses. And all the buildings of the Maker's Mark, they're not actually black. They're like a dark shade of brown. So that's what
I'm going to use that from now on. I'm gonna when people are like, is this brown or black? I'm like, have you been to Maker's Mark rick houses?
Yeah, well, all the buildings at Maker's Mark. But yeah, it's an experience. You open the box, you pull this out, then you flip open the magnetic closure.
Well, if anyone's ever done a blind tasting with one, there always has to be somebody that knows everything, and it's usually somebody's husband or somebody's wife or somebody's friend, and they can screw it up along the way. There's that. And my buddies were doing blind tasting when quarantine started, and that's how I fell in love with the process. Mm-hmm. And I called up my buddy, and I'm like, dude, this is a business. This is a thing. I'd done it with wine. I'd never done it with whiskey. And I loved the communal part of it. I loved discovering what I liked. I loved the picking out the notes and the guessing them out. I loved all of that. And I'm like, this is a business. And he went, okay. And so I went on this rabbit hole. I'm like, nobody's ever done this before. Now, either it's not allowed legally, maybe, or maybe it's just complicated. Turns out it's pretty complicated. And what I discovered is, and this is true, this is great life advice. This is a life hack. If you ever have that neighbor that cuts down your tree, or you're going through a divorce and you need an attorney, whatever the field is, in my case, an ABC, an alcohol beverage control attorney, you can get a free 1 hour long consultation with any attorney for any field generally. So I did 16 of those. I just kept calling I just kept calling ABC attorneys and the first 7 were like, you can't do any of this. And then the 8th one was like, well, you know what you could do? You could do this, but you can't do that. Then I just kept gleaming information until I got into and figured out a way to do it. It's not an easy model. There's a reason nobody's done it before. It is somewhat complicated. I wish I could say we're just pouring a bunch of whiskeys in a bottle and shipping it out of my house. It's like, we're not doing that. We can't legally do that. I'm sure we could get away with that for a certain amount of time if we did it that way. But it took us a year and a half to launch the company because we had to figure out how to do it. And then we had to put all the legal parameters and partnerships in place in order to actually do it.
Yeah. No,
so there's the behind the scenes.
Well, I get that 100%.
The other life hack, if you have a company with an employee assistance program, normally you get a 30-minute consult with a lawyer at no cost. You're welcome. For all those listeners who have an employee assistance program.
Or psychiatric help, because most of us need that.
Mental health is on the rise. Mental Health Awareness Month is in May. So make sure every May that you talk to your employer about mental health and what your products and services are. And that is our reminder to take care of yourself. But no, seriously. I think what I am really interested in is, competition wise, right? Me and you talked about this in private, but there's like one other company that I could think of that's doing it like whiskey worldwide, right? Like, so you have beverage, right? Like that is doing worldwide whiskey, and you all are focused on that craft. And was there a reason why you wanted to focus on craft versus kind of like that whole whiskey spectrum around the world? Like craft American whiskey, even at that?
That's a phenomenal question. And yeah, you mentioned beverage, and a great difference is they have a lot more money than us in terms of their ability to jump off with, they're doing documentaries right off the bat. I actually think they're a high quality brand. Obviously our price point is half of what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the things in their lineup are things that I can get. So in terms of, I wanted us to make sure that what we were doing is special and having access to these brands that you normally can't get. If you're going to give me a blind tasting of stuff, if you're going to do Michter's and Maker's Mark and Jack Daniels and stuff that I can, that's easily accessible, I'm not going to feel special when you make those reveals. But it was really, at the end of the day, had a lot to do with supporting American small businesses. It's the part of the Venn diagram where I don't care what your political party is, but I think that both liberals and conservatives can agree on supporting small American businesses. And that's really where the heart of our company wanted to be. Yeah. We wanted to uplift, we wanted to showcase these smaller brands. And at the end of the day, if you're going to get a special box that looks special, we want everything in that box to be special. And we want the experience to be special. And go become lifelong fans of some of the brands that are in this box. And some of the, the coolest thing is we still have these relationships with these distillers after we talk to them, even though they're in our lineup. We continue to do posts about them. We continue to showcase them. We continue to spend marketing dollars on them because we are big fans of them. And we can't market their product while they're in our lineup. We have to kind of wait until the lineups happen. It's been a reveal. And then it's like, look at what you missed out on a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. But that, I think, had a lot to do with the ethos of our brand in general, of what we wanted to make sure that we were doing something special and really supporting American businesses at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense. And I'm going to ask really kind of an off question, because I know we're not going to reveal this, but like, one of the things I find interesting is like you've tasted through hundreds of samples, right? And I'm sure there's one that's not in here, so we're not going to talk about that or in the last 2 samples. But has there been like one whiskey that has kind of just been like, this is just so weird and random, and like, a brand that's kind of been like, wow, like I can't believe that's in a bottle, like, and that's why, like, because no one will know that. I just want to know your opinion, like, as you've tried all of these before we dive into these 4. Has there been one that's kind of been like our brand that's kind of blown your mind from like, that's really odd, and how did they get that in a glass of whiskey?
100%. And that's why the blind tasting has to happen. And that we're not, the problem is sometimes we fall in love with people, right? And we love distillers and we love their story so much so that we then convince ourselves that the whiskey's awesome because the people are awesome. And it's not always true. I wish all of that were true. Worst case scenario also is when we really like the whiskey and we don't like the people. And then we got to find a way to make that work too, because the whiskey's good enough. I'm looking at 3 brands of, you'd mentioned 100. I'm looking at 200 bottles on the shelf behind this computer right now. And there's 3 right now that are super, super weird. And one of them, it's good, but it's a little bit too weird. I'm not going to say their brand. Another one, I don't even know if it's whiskey. It doesn't even say whiskey on the actual label. And we questioned, it said it was like a single malt. And I'm like, they did something in the process that I think kept them from being actual whiskey. Like they put hops in at the end. They did something weird. This one guy who was an amazing salesman, and he drove 4 hours to come see me. And it's this sweet sorghum. And he's got this like old system in the way he mashes it, and it's in this bottle, and it's sugar cane. Like they're making it out of like sugar cane. It's not that great. And unfortunately, not everybody in the craft world's making good stuff. And even the mediocre, we really want the creme de la creme. We like to think that you're going to like all the brands in the lineup, and you're going to fall in love with 1 or 2 of them and become lifelong fans of 1 or 2 of them. And if you're a single malt smoky guy, yeah, we're going to check that box at some point for you. Is it going to be in every lineup? No. Is there going to be a bourbon in every lineup? Absolutely. There has to be. Are we going to have some interesting 4-grain things and all different sorts of it? You mentioned malted rye. We got a malted rye coming up in September. That's an 8-year that is probably the oiliest mouthfeel. I can't even say it. I've had too many drinks. The oiliest mouthfeel that I've ever had of a whiskey ever. And it's undeniably fire for anybody that tries it. They go, what the hell is this? And it's the coolest label I've seen on a bottle. And I mean, amazing people. I can't wait to go visit these people when we go and shoot these documentaries. You meet these phenomenal people, and their whiskey's great. And look, sometimes weird is good, and sometimes it's too weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like they threw hops in the end, and they finished in a tequila barrel, and it's like you tried, but it sucks.
Yeah.
And the whiskey wizards are my buffer to that, so that there's no blood on my hands. That when I create this relationship, that I do give a lot of autonomy to my guys. That, yeah. You tell me what you like, and if I got to have that conversation, but it's also my out if something isn't liked. And I do follow up, and I do maintain those relationships, because those small distillers might be making some great stuff one day, and I don't want to spoil that relationship.
Yeah, I think that's important too, is not wiping your hands of distilleries where you like the people, and you see that they are going or heading in the right direction. Maybe you don't like it right now. And I'll admit, Starlight was one of those for me 6-7 years ago. Back when they started bottling their stuff and it was 2 years old.
They're making wine, It's like, does
not for me.
Make wine know how to make whiskey? Not necessarily. Yeah. And you're 100% right. Like all of a sudden this, and look, what do most young distillers do? They don't distill, they source. And some can call it cheating or whatever. If you know anything about branding, or somebody's a good blender, there's nothing wrong with that. But you got to take your hat off to somebody that has the guts to put the money of what it takes to actually, just stills alone, and then to have the patience, and then to wait for it to turn out, and to have it be at least okay and be good. That's something to be proud of. That is the American dream. That is manifest destiny. That is everything that we talk about when we talk about American values.
Well, and what a lot of people don't realize is like the story of like Huber's. So like, we'll take this craft brand, for instance. So Ted starts this brand, but the first call he makes is to Dave Pickerel, like the godfather of craft whiskey. And so Dave Pickerel comes along and helps them understand this. At the same time, Lisa Wicker also joins the team, who is the master distiller and master blender for Widow Jane. And so like, as those people are sitting around crafting and creating the Starlight brand that originally came out, Christian and Blake are going off to school, becoming winemakers, but also learning and diving into this, idea of bourbon and craft whiskey and rye whiskey. And they get to watch Lisa and Dave and Ted and all these other people that are peripheral to those people come in. And now as they take the reins along with Ted, like you have a second generation of whiskey makers that learned from top people in the industry. And if not the godfather of craft whiskey himself and Dave Pickerel, like, that's a hell of a story that a lot of people don't know. Right. And so I think that's the beauty of craft, is a lot of times you'll hear a name like Dave Pickerel behind the scenes that has helped a ton with, I know he was at Whistle Pig and Stranahan's and like all of these things. Like Dave was, Blackened even, like, he was there, like those people were there. And I think that's Jim Rutledge is another person that's done a lot of that since he's left Four Roses even. So, yeah. Yeah. And so like, that's one of the things like I would be really, transparent about is these craft people have lineage into these heritage brands that you don't think about, because they're learning. If they're doing it right, they're learning from the best, because you mentioned something about the bourbon community. This is the same thing about the bourbon industry from a making perspective. They will reach out their helping hand. They will help a ton. And that's one of the things that I've admired about being in the bourbon and whiskey community is that if a brand needs help, they're going to get the help they need. They may have to pay for it a little bit, but like they're going to get the help they need from whomever. If you think about like Wyoming whiskey, for instance, like Steve Nally, now they have Nancy Fraley. I mean, come on now. Like, it's not like you have bad people helping you craft your whiskey, over time. But diving in,
incestuous, right?
Yeah.
If you look at, and I don't mean incestuous in a bad way, I mean in a good way. If you look at, even if you're going to go Buffalo Trace and you're going to go Stitzelweller, you're going to go into the history of all that, they're all tied together. And as we branch out into the craft world, one of the people in the lineup that you're having right now, apprenticed at Dry Fly, up in Seattle, and honed in those skills, and the ones that are willing to put in that effort. And like you mentioned, the Huber family, they didn't have the hubris to come in and assume that, well, I'm the heir apparent. No, they went in, they put in the work, and they watched the masters, and they earned that. It wasn't just a birthright. They earned it through hard work. They earned it through apprenticeship. And that is the history of whiskey. And I love that you mentioned that. Yeah, everybody helps each other out. The whiskey community, from an industry standpoint, if somebody's short on barrels, somebody's going to step up. Yeah. MGP is a great example of that, in terms of when that demand picked up, that, Midwest Grain Product came in and was that when that demand was there and the supply wasn't, they stepped up and they filled that void, and it actually created the whole. People go, well, Widow Jane is sourced and it's blending, or Penelope or Nulu or whatever. It's fucking awesome. It's really good. Like, I don't care what you want to say that somebody didn't distill their own product.
Blending's an art just as much it is as it is to distill.
100%. I totally agree. And we don't say, oh, we have to have. And yes, we have some ground to glass distillers that are whiskey farmers that are doing that, their whole backstory. But I love that you know the history of that, and especially the backstory of these distillers. And I've heard it on your show once, and everybody that's on your show. I mean, I love that you guys get the industry a little bit more than a lot that's out there. That's what I enjoy the most about your show, really.
Well, we appreciate that. We take the adage, and we tell this to everyone before they hop on. We talked about behind the scenes in the locker room, but like we have these 30-minute conversations most of the time before we start a podcast, just to get to know people. But the one thing we say right before we go on is, we just met you at a bar. Like, talk to us like you're telling us that, hey, this is a good brand. Here's why. Like, tell me about yourself just as much as you're telling me about your whiskey, because that's going to create the connection to the product. And like, have there been things that I've tried at craft distillers like Starlight, and I've told Christian this, multiple times, and so has Scott, like, cause we've gone up there and we've done barrel picks. We're like, hey, we like this one. We don't like that one. Like, and it was like, this one needs to age a little bit longer and yada, yada, yada. But like, you build those relationships over time, because they become part of what we consider the Bourbon Lens family. Because we're not talking to everyone. We're being really selective and going deep with those partnerships that are out there to create those conversations.
Well, maybe there needs to be a Bourbon Lens box down in the future. Because I got to tell you, Starlight didn't reach back to me. I left my card and I emailed the guy, and I loved everybody there. But I know they're a big operation, and they're big within the craft world. But I just love that they have so many SKUs and they're crushing it in so many SKUs.
Yeah.
And we have a couple craft brands that they only make one thing. We have one that we're talking to. It's a veteran-owned distillery. They make one thing, and they kill it. But I admire when somebody can make so many things and be really good at all of them. And if you've been to that back room and on that tour where you can see where they're trying and they're testing and there's test tubes out, and they are literal whiskey wizards out there that are trying to formulate and do things. They're taking all the chances that the big guys won't.
Yep.
And now we're seeing, it's like and not to knock Jack Daniels, but I mean, Jack Daniels was something that I drank a lot in my late teens / early 20s. And you'd make that Jack and Coke. And I mean, the bar I was at was so cheap that it would be Southern Comfort and Coke. And I'm like, you guys just saved $1 a bottle. That's bullshit. And I could tell that it's not Jack Daniels. But now Jack Daniels, their single barrel, the Coy Hill release. I mean, it's so good. Like they're taking a page from the craft book now in the releases that are coming out.
Everyone talks about Coy Hill, and I'll tell you this about Jack Daniels: go buy their American single malt. Like
don't or
no
do?
go.
Oh, they're triple mash.
Really?
They're triple mash, so good.
Really, I have not had it.
Like
I'm trying to get the hazmat. What is it?
That's the
153 proof or something.
Yeah, there's something like I'm just super curious about that. But I just had their single barrel when I was in Denver a few months ago, and I was like, because I couldn't get it out here, and I'm like, boom, I'm grabbing this, that. I grabbed that, and I'm like, this is fucking really good. I have to completely change the way that I associate the brand with now.
Yeah,
completely.
well, Jack is doing a really good job of differentiating themselves. Their bottled and bond is really good. But the triple mash with the single American single malt in it, I think is really well done. Mm-hmm. Anywho, let's talk about this box. So we have 4 samples in front of us. I have a clear 2 favorites, and then I'm kind of on the other 2. So Scott, I'm let's see if you can guess which 2 are my favorites. How about we'll blind you on who do you think which ones I liked?
I would say that C is probably a clear favorite for you.
Hated C. Absolutely hated it. Did not like it one iota. I love the nose. Hate the taste.
Well, then I have no idea.
So A and D as in dog, were my 2 favorites.
I could.
And what did you like, Scott?
I'm sure
you liked C, right?
I'll let Jake guess my 2 favorites.
Well, he liked the grain forward one, so I know he liked A because it was a bunch of corn. Like, I know he liked that one.
Corn liquor.
Yeah, I drank that and I was like, that's Scott's favorite. But I loved the grain on A. I want to say
that's not a bad thing anymore, by the way. I like how, you're saying grain forward. That used to be, because look, at the end of the day, you're getting a wood chip the longer you keep it in, especially a new barrel. Mm-hmm. Scotch, you can go 25 years because it's aged in it's a reused barrel. It's different. But I like how you're not putting a negative connotation. There are things that are grain forward. And I think that if it's done right, it can be beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, not to interrupt your flow, but I just had to jump in.
I mean, I like grain forward from big distilleries. That's why I like JTS Brown. I like corn whiskey. That's what I like. And even the big guys. But if the small guys have good grain, first of all, you got to use good grains. If it's grain forward, I think that's an attribute, right? It's literally, this is a product of a crop.
Yep.
We can talk about the wood influence and everything else, but at these ages, 2, 3, 5 years, 6 years, maybe, at these ages, the most important part to me is the grain.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say you liked A and C.
Actually, I was leaning more towards A and B.
Well, so I just retried B and I was like, the mouthfeel on B is really good. I wish the mouthfeel on B was this on C, like the creaminess of the nose on C to me was like off the chain good, like vanilla, creme brulee type notes. But I love like the Canadian style of D, like that really just kind of got to my soul. Like, I love like that weedy cinnamon butter wheat nope that is rye whiskey, like that, like Canadian rye, like, so that reminds me of like a northeastern or northwestern rye, or maybe a northeastern rye whiskey.
I put that was a high rye.
What do you guys think was? What do you guys think the mash bill or the dominant mash bill was So let's start with A. You guys both agree that that's a
corn. That's a bourbon.
That's a bourbon, right? You can just sense that right all the way. B is maybe very few people have gotten B right.
I said that I don't know what B is, but I'd said it doesn't seem like it's a bourbon. Like
It's not a bourbon.
I don't really get any corn on that. I think it's either a rye whiskey or potentially a wheat whiskey, but I'm not sure. But the notes that I got for that one was caramel, sweet molasses, like almost like a maple.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is Old Elk.
Ooh,
I would love to have Old Elk in our lineup. And, one of the hardest things you got to understand is before we're a brand, before we have a website, we're limited in terms of, are we a real company? And a lot of these, come on. I mean, now you go to our website, you can see, yes, we're a real company. We're all that. But there was some trust involved. So now we have brands reaching out to us, which is
you'll experience this too. And because we've experienced this over the past 3 years.
It's a hockey stick.
It's a hockey stick, right? When you're starting out and you're still a startup, but once you get that recognition and that trust and people start putting the word in for you, I think that hockey stick will real quick.
Yeah, we've got our wish list.
I agree with you. I think it is a wheat whiskey. It's not a bourbon or a rye. It's definitely not a rye whiskey.
So B is 100% wheat, and it's a brand. This distillery is out where my dad lives, and it was the only one that I foisted upon our whiskey wizards in the first lineup, and they were a little bitter about that. And it ended up being a surprise hit. People loved this brand. It's a summer sipper. It's an easy drinker. It's a 2-year, and it is Drift Distillery in San Clemente, California. Ryan Winter and his wife, Leslie. This is the guy that actually went up to Dry Fly and apprenticed. He was in a marketing, and he just threw his balls out on the line and decided to make – and I'll tell you, he makes a rye that crushes it. He makes a barbecue sauce that – it needs to pass FDA standards because when I'm there, I get jugs of the barbecue sauce. It's the best barbecue sauce I've ever had in my entire. I'll have to send you guys next time I'm down there in a couple of weeks. I'll have to send you guys some. It kills. It's so good. But a true actual grain to glass distillery. These guys source from their family farm in Kansas. They bring it back. They mill it. They mash it. They do everything. And it's a 2-year. And I think it drinks like a 4 or a 5-year.
Is that Northern California?
Southern California. San Clemente is about an hour north of San Diego.
Yeah.
So you said he was at Dry Fly for a period of time.
He apprenticed. He
apprenticed big on wheat whiskey. So yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
They have a wheat in the Triticale or whatever.
Yeah, which is that rye wheat hybrid. That's a wild.
That's a wild drink.
But it's hard to grow. It's hard to it's hard to distill. It's not the easiest grain to distill. Sample A, I'll give you a hint. It's in Colorado. It is a bourbon, and it's not 291, and it's not Breckenridge, and it's not Greg. It's not Old Elk.
Boulder.
Oh no,
it's not in Boulder.
Damn, I have a.
They're in a ski town. Ski town where one character said to the other, "Nice ass," and he says, "He must work out."
I can't think of it. No, I can think of Colorado whiskey guy on Instagram and YouTube. We'll have to definitely. I'm sure he could recognize this one, but
it's in Vail, Colorado. They're probably the most distributed of anybody in our first lineup. Like we can get them in certain places on the West Coast. They're not as distributed throughout the rest of the country. It's 10th Mountain Distillery.
Oh yeah.
And Ryan Thompson,
got the guy carrying the rifle.
Yep. Yeah. And so the 10th Mountain Division is the winter part of the military. I always imagined it's like a James Bond where like you're on skis killing people, but it's really like it was one of the most deployed divisions in Afghanistan. And a lot of these guys, when they got out of their tours, they came back and they became ski instructors, and they populate these ski towns. And Ryan Thompson, just a good dude. If you ever talk to him, it's you would think that he's a ski instructor. He kind of talks like he's maybe a little stoned sometimes, and maybe he is. They're in Colorado, but he's just a really cool, laid back, awesome guy. We love the brand. They're mixing 1, 2, and 3 year. I think what makes that brand so complex and why people like it. And it was, once again, people love this in the first lineup, not just because it's the bourbon, because of that complexity of the way that they're blending different age statements, which I think is an art, in and of itself. They're distilling and they're blending, which is pretty cool.
I think like it's a distinction, right? It's this idea of youthful whiskey versus the idea of young whiskey, right? We talked about this with Pinhook, right? So young whiskey is grain and ethanol forward. And that's where a lot of people hear like grain forward and they are like, eek, because they get all the ethanol. But when you hear this idea of youthful, it's vibrant. It's got a lot of context and flavor, but it's not quite char, barrel, chocolate, oak, tannin type notes, right? So it avoids that, but it gives a youthfulness from a flavor profile perspective. And so I think that's the distinction people need to learn. And it could be different vocabulary or linguistics or whatever you want to use. But like, I think A is a youthful bourbon versus a young bourbon.
I love how you said that. I think that's a great, it's young versus youthful. And I don't think it'd be put better than that. I think there are negative connotations with certain things, and we're dispelling those myths.
Yeah.
Right. And I will say, look, our June lineup, yes, we have a 15-year rye that's matured in a Weller barrel. Okay. We have in our September lineup, we have an 8-year. Everything is above 4 years. So we're not saying, everything has to be young or everything has to be old. We're just saying it has to be good. And age statement doesn't really matter. It has to be with the way that it's made. Has to be quality grains, as you were saying, Scott. 100% has to be done that way. And I'm a sucker for a good label and a backstory too, right?
Yeah.
I like to tell a story of this whiskey and this brand and this distiller and what they did. Now you didn't like C, Jake. Scotty, what did you think of C in general? Was it just not your favorite, or you liked it but you didn't love it?
See, I thought that Jake would like C because I think it's just a rye whiskey. I think it's a very traditional, like minty, kind of like candied ginger, like fragrant. Real fragrant.
I do love the nose. I will say this is a bottle. Actually, I have a bottle of all these at my house, but Sample C was one that really surprised that a lot of people didn't think was a rye. And you're right, it is a rye. And it's not just a rye, it's a dark pumpernickel rye, which means they leave the husk on when they're going through the distilling process. And this one, 4 months after they were in our lineup, or 3 months after they were in our lineup, won an Ascot Award, whatever value that has, from the Fred Minnick Award for the best rye. And it's Middle West in Columbus, Ohio. And I got to tell you, the people in Middle West are just, they sent us 6 bottles. I got some bourbon cream in the fridge behind me. That's phenomenal. Everything they sent us was tested really well. In fact, Jake, and I love your honesty. Be honest about all these brands. They wouldn't want it any other way. That's what this is all about, whether you're liking or loving something or disliking something. This was maybe one of the bigger hits within the lineup with most people because it didn't taste like it's not a peppery, it's not a spicy rye. And I think it's nuanced. I think what's interesting about this is the character of it changes in the glass. The more that it aerates, the more that the air hits it, it kind of evolves a little bit. But
I just had to pour a little bit more because Jake, I thought you would have liked this one. So just knowing your palate and like how much you lean towards those ryes, like the fragrant rye. A little mint on it.
There was a note on it, right? So like I loved the nose. Like honest to God, love the nose. There was an off-putting note in the flavor profile for me that was like, if it was in a barrel for probably another 6 months, that note would have been gone. I think that to try that maybe at 3 years or 4 years, depending on how old it is, because rye can come up.
That note was.
There was a ginger note in there that needed to kind of like roll out. That it was like almost too potent for me, and like I'm not a huge ginger fan. Like I hate ginger ale, and like it kind of reminded me of ginger. So like if that rolled out and became, because I think ginger and lemon and orange can go really close together. I think if that rolled to an orange or a lemon type of note or more tropical fruit, I would have been on it. but because it was more ginger, mint, like Scott said, it just kind of was a little off-putting to me.
I think it's almost like the ginger that you put with like sushi.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what I thought.
It's a little like floral, which admittedly, I think that smells good, not necessarily tastes good, but I'm not a rye whiskey fan. Like, rye whiskey is not my forte. Like, yes, I do like some rye whiskeys, but if I'm forced to choose between a corn whiskey and a rye whiskey, I'm going corn all day because that's what whiskey tastes like to me. But that's surprising, and yeah, I don't think we've ever had Middle West.
Yeah, I mean, I've not either, but I love the nose. I think they're close. I think they're super close.
Definitely check them out. Like, everything that they sent us did well, and what was interesting is everything they sent us was completely different. None of their SKUs. They had a wheated whiskey. They sent a bourbon. They sent a little bit of everything. We almost went with pumpernickel rye because we needed a rye and it sounded cool. Pumpernickel, like, oh, what does that come from? And what's the story behind that? But I think that what we really liked about it is there's a brown sugar note that is heavy within it that is going to make people think it's a bourbon. And so we're almost like cajoling the bourbon drinkers to like it. So that then they kind of change their preferences. So we had a lot of bourbon drinkers. We had a lot of responses from our subscribers that said, I didn't think I'd ever like a rye, and I liked this rye because it wasn't traditional.
Is it 100% rye, 95 rye? Like, is it got corn in it at all?
I can tell you it is 96 proof, and it is 85% dark pumpernickel rye, 10% sweet yellow corn, non-GMO, 2 dent, and barley and wheat make up the remaining 5%.
So it's a 4 grain. That's interesting.
So
4 grain rye. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like the tobacco finish. There's kind of a leathery tobacco on the finish. So when you start with sweet and you kind of end, it's kind of like that everlasting gobstopper where it's like the schnozberries taste like schnozberries.
Go back to it and it changes.
It just evolves a little bit in the glass, on the palate. The nose, the taste, and the finish are all completely different phases, and that's what made us really like it, and that's what made, I think, a lot of our subscribers kind of like it.
Yeah.
And it's a bottle that it was maybe one of the most sold bottles in that lineup, but Sample D was right up there with it. And it's interesting because if you get a room full of people, there's always, if you get 20 people in a room, 4 people love A. Half the people love B, C, and D. And then for D, it was always interesting. 10 people out of 20 would say it's their most favorite whiskey of all time, and the other 10 would say they hated it. And it was this weird thing about it that was somehow polarizing. I like that you guys both picked on. I would say most whiskey people, most high proof people do end up really, really liking Sample D. And it's probably most likely a brand you haven't heard of. So Mash Bill, your guessing is what?
I thought it was rye.
It's a bourbon, but it's pretty rye heavy.
What are you getting, Jake?
I mean, I thought it was Canadian rye, so like it could be close to bourbon, but I think it's a rye whiskey.
So there is 25% rye.
So it is a high rye.
Okay.
So it's a high rye, yeah, and it is a 70% corn bourbon mash, and it is from Corbin Cash Distillery in California. Have you guys heard of Corbin Cash?
No, never.
No, never.
So this is a genuine farmer in the middle of nowhere, Merced. They're more known for their Merced rye. Their bourbon mash hadn't been known. This distiller, the guy David Souza, is the grandchild of Portuguese immigrants to Portugal. And when he was the first day that the water broke on his still, his baby, his actual wife's water broke on his other baby, on his real son. And he couldn't name the distillery Souza because it sounds like the tequila, Sauza. And it sounds like, there's a almost a Latinx, whatever you want to call it, thing to it. And he named the distillery after his son, Corbin Cash. And so he's an almond farmer in middle California in farmland country. Sources all their grain from their neighbor. I mean, this guy's a true. You meet the guy. Where I'm working on the short documentary that's going to come out in the next 10 days, just to highlight this distillery and their story. It's a really cool story. But he was going to blend it, and one of the reps from Southern was there, and he's like, "What are you doing with this?" He's like, "I'm going to blend it." And he's like, "You don't blend this," and he entered it into 2 blind tastings where it didn't just get gold or platinum; it won best in show in a blind tasting. We actually did a blind tasting where I threw Old Carter. I had some samples of Old Carter that I put in the lineup just because I'm like, Old Carter's going to win, right? It's Old Carter, and it didn't. It got second place to this in the blind tasting, and that was really when we went, okay, we discovered a diamond in the rough here. This is a brand that nobody's heard of, a brand that everybody will hear of, a true small town American farmer story, and we love this product. You know, it's their sour mash. It's a 4-year.
Oh, wow.
And it's phenomenal.
4 years old. Yeah. So Jake, I can see why you would like this one. It's got a really heavy orange citrus note to it.
100%.
I almost thought it was like those chocolate covered oranges. And then at the end, when I went back and poured a little bit more, it has this smoky tobacco, like you're almost smoking like a cigar. And I'll admit it's not my favorite of the 4. I think number A or B were probably my 2 favorites. This one is super complex, though. I mean, I've got a lot of tasting notes for it. Which
it's 106 proof, so there's a little bit more heat to it. You know, our June lineup, separate from this, we did 2 barrel proofs right out of the barrel. I mean, one of them, there's literally char in the bottle. You know, in some of the bottles, we filtered most of it, but some of them, like, I don't know. I think some people will appreciate the character that brings. That, you know, we had 115 and 128 proof in our June lineup. And we think the cast strength. At some point, I do want to do a hazmat. I do want to do a light whiskey. You know, we want to kind of cover the spectrum of all the things that whiskey can be from a natural sense and from a distillery sense. And Corbin Cash, I think, besides having a cool name, besides having like maybe one of the coolest looking bottles out there, you know it's homemade because you got to get the knife out to get that fucking wax off. I got to pull the knife out, and my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "This string's not going to work on this bed. They're not like Maker's Mark.
They never pull all the way.
Yeah.
It's like they triple dipped it, you know." But everything in this, so I mean, if you think about everything in this lineup, you guys hadn't heard of one of them or 2 of them, right? Drift and Corbin Cash.
Correct.
Yeah, so I've never heard of either one of those. Yeah.
So how cool is that? You know, I mean, I know
I've never tried any of the whiskeys from any of these, which is
no, we've never tried any of the whiskeys from any of these locations. And you know, we talked to 10th Mountain a little bit, like on Instagram, but like that was a year and a half ago. Like it's been a while.
Yeah, and if you ever want to, like, you know, same thing, whiskey community, like El Portrero, hey, make that introduction. I'm happy. Anybody that in our lineup that you guys want to talk to, we just did. I mean, for a whiskey group, a small Pleasant Valley Bourbon side, there's 20 members in this whiskey group just north of me. And the owner of Corbin Cash, David, came on and walked us through. They make a sweet potato vodka and a gin. Everything in their lineup is crushes. It's so good. I'm not even a gin person. I'm not really a vodka person, but their sweet potato vodka, they make a whiskey, sweet potato whiskey liqueur that just knocks your socks off. You can go to their site, buy from them. I don't really care. Everything they make is handmade. It's quality. And he sat there and in the middle, I mean, you know, California West Coast time, 7:30 to 10 o'clock at night, and walked us through all of these samples themselves. That's what real craft distillers do. They stand behind their product. They believe in it. They want to talk about it, even if it's with a small group of people, because they know how important it is to create the base of people that actually care about their product rather than these mass marketing campaigns that they don't have the budget for. It's why some of these brands agree to be in our lineup. We don't say pay to be in our lineup. We don't say give us your product at cost. We don't do anything like that. Yes, we want them to profit from being in our lineup. And at the end of the day, we want them to win in the grand scheme so that people discover their brands and stick with it.
Yeah.
Fall in love with it,
Jake, you know what this reminds me of? And I just thought of this. My cigar pack.
Yeah.
Like,
very similar.
He goes out and finds those cigar brands, those craft cigar brands.
Which brand are you talking about? Privada?
No, My Cigar Pack.
Oh, I don't know about that brand. What do they do? Is it a subscription?
Yeah, so it's a subscription. You get. They used to do 3: mild, medium, and full bodied. Now I think they do a medium full and a mild medium. But it's basically 5 cigars per month. Most of it's small batch, and I don't know what the term is for cigars, but craft, I guess. And it's basically a blind bag. Now they do have the wrappers on them, but you don't know what you're getting.
Yeah, you've never heard of them.
And with cigars, yeah, you can see the label, but you really have no clue what it is and why you're smoking it. You don't know if it's Nicaraguan or Dominican or Cuban or whatever. But yeah, he curates these packs, sends them out, and then he makes relationships with these brands too. And then he's also done some private label stuff with some of these smaller brands, and that's what this reminds me of. And it just hit me. But yeah, and then he rolled out his own private blend, the Mysterious Tiger.
Whoa! Did you say Misterio Tigre?
Yeah.
Yeah, and but yeah,
El Potrero Tigre.
Alex was one of our guests. He was on our podcast a while back. He was our first cigar, whiskey adjacent.
Yeah.
It was a cigar tasting. We were smoking cigars while recording a podcast. It was one of my favorites because that's something I enjoy doing. But that's what this reminds me of. Yeah.
I mentioned Privada because I know the owner of them, and it's a similar thing, maybe on a bigger scale. But I still have this. It's all craft, and I still have this cigar, and it's funny because it's called the No Label cigar. And damn it, if this cigar wasn't, there's no label on it. It's literally a no label cigar. It's like the Black Album from Metallica. It's like this. It's this no label, and it's phenomenal. And it's got the plume. In your humidor, and you get the plume on it. Yes. It's because it's been in there that time. It's got the plume on it, and I don't want to smoke it because I don't think I can ever get it again. And I'm waiting for something. And yes, I got some. I just had 10 Arturo Fuente Opus X's. I don't know if you've ever had that, but I mean, holy crap, dude. I know that there's great cigars out there, but I've never had my mind just totally blown away by a cigar. And it's not a craft brand, and I have a little bit of everything in the box, but I'm not a massive cigar smoker. I smoke maybe once every 2 weeks. And so I have a full humidor that I love sharing that. If I'm going to have a cigar, I'm going to share it with somebody that's going to appreciate whatever it is that we're having. And like you said, there's these small brands out there, and discovering this brand. And now I'm worried that I can't get this brand anymore because it doesn't yes, you can find somebody that's going to get you the Padrones or is going to get you the Arturo Fuente Opus X. That somebody can get that at some point, and those won't go out of existence. But this goddamn one cigar, the no brand, there's no label on it, and it's literally called I don't think I can get it anymore. I don't think it exists anymore. And so it's almost this opus to the cigars that I can't get that are the craft cigars. And
well, that's your next documentary, right? Like seeking out the cigar that you smoked whenever it was.
And then we're gonna get these craft cigars name, image, and likeness rights, so that when they make a video game about that cigar, that cigar gets paid.
No, boy.
There you go.
The video game. It could happen.
Oh, so speaking of, here's my last question for you. Can you tell our listeners how much the subscription cost and a little bit more about where they can find out more about Blind Barrels?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you can go to blindbarrels.com. And so quarterly, yes, you can buy a one-off box. If you want to buy a gift for somebody, just buy a one-off box. If you want to buy an annual subscription for somebody, you can get a gift card. You can actually just order it and then cancel it. That's another way to do it. because it's reoccurring. So quarterly, it is $59.99, and you get 4 samples every quarter. And we do a flat rate of shipping. I mean, I just got the shipping bill for June. There's honestly, alcohol sucks, dude. Like shipping alcohol, there's somebody that it was $37 to ship to their house because of where they were located, because they were in a gated community, because the number of attempts, because it was a signature, because it was residential. And I'm like, oh my God, we lost money on that. We lost a lot of money on that, on just because of the shipping of that. Even full bottles, we do a flat rate of shipping. Annual, it's $200, so it's $199. We're cheaper than any competitor. We have 30% more samples than our competitors. And yeah, once again, you have access to stuff that you can't get. If you use the discount code whiskey10, you'll get 10% off of anything you order. If it's merchandise, I think our merch is dope. You know, I got to tell you, the hats. We have a lot of people that buy our hats because they're just dope hats. They're just really cool. We don't say, it doesn't say blind barrels on the hat. It's just the monkey in the barrel. You know, our tasting glasses, our shirts, it's all soft, high quality cotton. You know, I don't put my shirts in the dryer because I'm a big dude and I know they won't fit me later. But everything about it's high quality. So you want 10% off just our merchandise? You want it off a one-off box, a quarterly, an annual? You know, come check us out. Yeah. And if you don't love it, tell us why. Tell us what you don't like. You know, if you message the robot for now, I'm the robot. So if you message me at 2 a.m, don't abuse that. I am the robot on the site. Okay. We don't have 80 employees. This is a small company. Our whole company is designed to grow. You know, we don't have salaries built into our company. I think a lot of people take a look at it. It's like, oh, we're trying to make this thing. We're trying to build a brand and we're trying to build relationships. And there was one box that didn't get shipped. Well, it got shipped and somehow it got damaged. And so it just didn't get to this person. And it was one of those, I got an inbox from the robot on the site and I got an inbox from our support email at the same time at 11:30 at night on a Friday. And I just called the dude up on a Friday night at 11:30 at night and talked to him for an hour and a half and told him about the company. And I was like, how's this for customer service? You're going to get the president of the company. Because look, at the end of the day, I had a guy that didn't get his bottle within 2 weeks. And I said, dude, come in. You can try some future samples and you can pick out a shirt or a hat or whatever. If somebody's unhappy, there's some things that we can't control. We did a barrel pick where our distributor lost a case of them, and you can't replace a barrel pick. We do pride ourselves on customer service, and if you don't like what it is, tell us what you don't like. We're going to try to change. We're trying to grow. We're not perfect, but we're trying to, meet everybody. Like you guys didn't like a certain sample. Didn't you like that you got to try it though?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the great part is we try a lot of whiskeys and there's always going to be a whiskey that you don't prefer. I mean, we could also try that whiskey tomorrow and
love
be
it.
One of our favorites. And it happens to us all the time. Put a bottle on the shelf and then go back to it later because you never give up on a whiskey, right? And you don't give up on brands.
My best friend texted me and he's like, I didn't like sample D. The next day, he was like, how many bottles of sample D can I get? Swear to God. He had an onion in his dinner, and it was the onion just it affected his palate that night for whatever reason. And so the thing that he hated one night, he fell in love with the next night. The samples that each of these have, I think there's enough for 3 or 4 people to share them. But ideally, share with your wife, share with your friend. You don't have to get 2 boxes. You can get 1 and you can share it. There's plenty in each sample. I'm a big dude. I don't want my box myself. That's just me. You know what I mean? I don't want to do half of it one night. I want to spill it out into the next night. But probably the coolest thing that we got from our subscribers was one of the dudes was like, I didn't know that my wife liked whiskey. And yeah, 30% of bourbon whiskey drinkers are women. Okay. So it's not just men in their 60s drinking this shit. It's like, and he said, you know what? It brought us closer together and we are committed. Every 3 months we get together and it's a very romantic thing for them to talk about the nuances of what they like and what they don't like. And it's this nice, foreplay to the evening. and this discourse that they get to have before the actual intercourse, right? That they get to like fall. Well, come on. If we're going to do some puns and play on words, that, you know, they get to have fun. They get to get, it's not about just getting drunk. It's about having fun with it along the way. If you guys want to go get drunk, go get yourself some Jack Daniels, go get yourself some Maker's Mark, order some Drizzly, some regular shit that you can get. Not everybody's for our club, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And somebody will message the robot like, "Oh, so I'm paying $50 for 4 doubles." I'm like, dude, you spent $32 on a double of Blanton's at the bar. Like, what are you talking about? You just spent like way more than that on something that's accessible.
Yeah.
So it is perspective. Perception trumps reality sometimes.
Yeah. No, I think everyone, you know, if you want to try some unique whiskeys and try craft whiskeys, I think this is the greatest opportunity versus buying a whole bottle. This will give you a curated experience that is second to none from a aesthetics perspective. And I think that goes a really long way. So we really appreciate you, Bobby, for joining. And we appreciate all the listeners for keeping up with us for an hour and a half. I know we went all over the place, but really appreciate the time. Again, you can find more about Blind Barrels at Blind Barrels or blindbarrels.com. If you want to find out more about Bourbon Lens, head over to our social channels, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Bourbon Lens, or you can head over to Patreon for exclusive opportunities, patreon.com/Bourbon Lens. And for everyone, go over to your favorite podcast listening app, smash the subscribe button, give us a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate any comments that you leave us as well. And until next time, cheers.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys for having me on. We started with football, and then we finished on some whiskey, and you guys are always fun. I love your knowledge. I love the way that you are honest in your approach to this, and we appreciate that you enjoyed our brand. And if you guys want to do a tasting down the line, we'd be happy to send you what you're doing. Even if it's not on the show, you can check us out, and we'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Awesome.